Well, good evening, one. Welcome to the next edition of the DFS Down Under Show for round 14 AFL action. Smatho and Hef here are back for another bumper preview for Friday night footy. It is the Cats and the Bulldogs. Smatho on location this week in sunny Perth. And right now, if the AFL decided not to meddle with the fixture, I'll be watching the Eagles and the Tigers right now. But no, we are here previewing Friday. So good evening, Hef. How are you, mate?
Really good, Smatho, especially after that game on Sunday night. What an absolute ripper it was. Would have been a great experience for you to be amongst all those Eagles faithful when Kennedy kicked that big snap to win the game. But unfortunately not. Months ago, you got the sheet around you, Smatho. Last time I saw that, something had broken down.
Yeah. So, yes, it was in the caravan in Newcastle last time. This time I'm in Perth. Lovely spot. Have just in South Fremantle here. Lovely spot. Already been over to Rottnest Island. Have you been over there before, mate?
No, I've actually never been to WA. An Eagles man who's never been to WA. Work that out. Well, I thought I would have got an invite, to be honest, but no, well, I know where I am on the pecking order.
Now, we are brought to you by Draftstars. Draftstars are Australia's #1 daily fantasy site, offering Australian and New Zealand customers to win big cash prizes and also the opportunity to win your golden ticket to the AFL 300K live final in August. We're on the home stretch in terms of tickets here, Hef. We're down to, I think, 69 tickets left to go. So, mate, I'll give you a bit of a shout out to these guys here today who've been winning their tickets last week. Had big 5 days of footy from last week, so a lot of tickets have been handed out. So, Barbs, JJ, Hilldog, McCary Guy, Arwillen, the King, JRG, 1990, Baker's Pups, Gift, Jason Biggs with his second ticket, already from South Australia, who works as a reporter at Channel 9, Ugly Sweater, Sean, H16, Bucko, Stimpy, our mate Stimp, Seacots, 007, and Crystal Bros. So all have got their golden tickets to the live final there, mate. So what an achievement. 2 thumbs up to you guys for coming along. Any favourites from those particular up there, Hef?
Oh, I did see, was it Tom Wren? I did see him tweet, actually, that he won his way into the final. Just a bit of mainstream exposure for the live final, which is good to see. Good luck to him there in the final. A lot of tickets given away. There's one going on tonight, is there, NRL?
Yes, there is no, in the golf, the US Open golf.
Golf.
If you guys are watching the live stream tonight, make sure you get your Draftstars entry into the US Open. Killer Torrey Pines circuit coming up for the golfers here. But yes, more golden tickets are available, so make sure you get the draftstars.com.au and look at the lobby for your chance to win your golden ticket.
That was, I think that's 2 for Stimpy.
Is that a Thursday? We got a Friday.
Is that 2 for Stimpy?
2 for Stimp, yes.
2 for Whelan. There's 2 less people you've got to compete with to get your ticket. Get involved.
That's right. That's right. All right, let's get into the footy. So at 7:50 p.m. on Friday evening, we'll have the Geelong Cats versus the Western Bulldogs down at Kardinia Park. It's a 7:50 p.m. start. Currently, the Cats are favourites at $1.62. The line's 7.5. And the total's around 150.5. It's a little bit low side. So I did check the weather. There is some showers during the day in that Geelong area. But they say they might clear before the match. So if you see the line going a little bit higher, then you know why. In team news, our band, the Guff Pig, is back. Not sure he's 100% back, but he has been named. Sean Higgins has been managed, and Quinton Narkle was the medi-sub last week. And for the Dogs, no changes there. Riley West was the medi-sub, so good to go. Now, before you do the teams, Hef, our mate here, Jamie, likes me to pick a number. You can pick a number for you tonight, mate. Just pick a number. I'll tell you why later.
Excellent.
What number would you like?
Oh, me?
Yes.
Oh,
I'm asking you. Pick a number.
Number 6.
Very good. All right.
Does that work?
Yeah, it does work. You'll see it later. Don't you worry. All right. Any thoughts on the team news from the Cats here, mate?
From the Cats, well, there's a little bit to talk about because on paper it's Guthrie in for Higgins, but it was interesting last week that Higgins didn't attend any centre bounces, which sort of put paid to my confidence in Higgins. I thought he'd turn the corner, didn't attend a centre bounce, and he was absolutely awful when he did get near the ball. So it does shake up the team somewhat because we know Guthrie will be in there. Basically 60+% every game this year, bar when he was injured. I assume there's plenty of options for O'Connor to tag, so I assume he's going to stay in there a lot too. So it comes down to the other guys in there are Selwood, Dangerfield, and Parfitt. I'm sort of leaning to Parfitt being the guy to lose out, and he might sort of return to that sort of half-forward flank role that Higgins was filling. So initial thoughts are that maybe Parfitt's the guy who misses out. The interesting Mitch Duncan came back and didn't get a lot of exposure in the middle. It was probably more out in the wings and whatever else for him, Duncan. But yeah, the Bulldogs seem basically unchanged. There's nothing to identify there. But yeah, Parfitt's the first guy that I'm a little bit cautious of this week.
Yeah, it was a bit of a dirty night for Geelong's mids, as I recall last week. So as I refer to the notes here from Daily Fantasy Rankings, your number one resource for Australian fantasy data tools and cheat sheets and all that jazz. So here's what I found out earlier today. Both teams lead the competition in possessions, especially uncontested possessions, but both teams give up the least amount of possessions to opposition. So they get the ball, but they don't let the opposition have the ball. Pretty simple that. Bulldogs are number one in the league for giving up fantasy points to opposition rucks, and the Bulldogs have tightened fantasy scoring to opposition backs. So average of 61 fantasy points in the last 5. So two teams that possess the ball.
They're the best.
They don't give the ball. But it's going to be a little tough slate to break down, mate. So let's get stuck into this. It's a $75,000 contest available on Draftstars, plus the golden tickets. $7,400 is the first prize in the $75,000. Let me bring up the Draftstars lobby for this particular contest. Here we go. As we start in the rucks to start with, Tim English here at 12,210 has majority playing up forward. His mate Stephen Martin, who I thought he'll be injured this week, has actually come up at 7,810. Then the two blokes who kind of let us down last week, Mark Litzars at 10,570 and Asava Radigalera at 9,080 are our options in the rucks. It was a bit of a 60-40 split between Big Stars and Radigalera in the ruck last week, favouring Asava. So he spent more time in CBAs. Mark Blixars did 40% of the rucking. So out of these 4, I'm not really keen on any of them, maybe leaning to Blixars, but what do you think of this particular position this week?
Look, I think if you were playing safe, I think Blixars would be clearly the top pick for me. Martin, we have seen that he takes the majority of the centre bounces there with English. English got a nice boost last game because Martin actually was subbed out of the game, so English had to take over. Found his way up to about 90. Martin just looks done to me. It is a pretty good ground historically, GMHBA or whatever it's been called over the years for the ruckman. Do get a few more stoppages, I think, was the reason. A bit of rain wouldn't hurt either. You do have the option to play a bit of stacking here with the likes of Blixarves and English with multi-positions. I do find it hard to play the tall forwards against Geelong. I say this pretty much every week. We seem to get a lot of Geelong games and in these major time slots. Charlie Dixon was pretty good last week. But then he still only had about 80. Darcy Cameron did have a big ton against Geelong, but in general, it's hard to play the big tall fours. They cover them off pretty well, Geelong. So I'm pretty happy playing Blixarves. The problem you're going to have is the Blixarves are going to be really popular as always. And we talked last week how he's not a lock by any stretch. He can throw in those 60-ish point games. There was a 70 and a 59, like not the end of the world, but he's not hitting value there at plus at 10K. So Blixarves is my top pick, but I'm not married to it. And I'd probably just sprinkle. One thing we're going to get to in the mids is you're going to need some cash from somewhere because there's not many cheap midfielders, and that's somewhat of an argument for Stephen Martin, maybe. If you do need to save cash somewhere, that maybe if you're not overly keen on any of them, maybe it's a good spot to punt here with Martin.
I'll stick to Blixarves now, but as this lineup gets built later in the show, I might have to come back to old Stefan. So let's leave Blixarves for there for now. Let's move on to the defence. And look, Geelong's source of fantasy scoring from the backs was pretty weak last week, so really struggle against the power, and now get a tougher matchup against the Doggies. But the same can be said for the Doggies backs. You know, they're coming up against Geelong, who just don't leave any fantasy points for the backs at all. So really struggling to find some guys here in the backs. Do you have anything that could be safe to put into your lineup?
Well, that stat that you showed about in the last 5 games for the Bulldogs only giving up 61 points on average to the backs. We had been targeting backs against the Bulldogs, especially uncontested ball winners back there, and those numbers would suggest that theory's been biting us on the rear end a couple of times lately. But for comparison's sake, we know always basically to avoid playing backs against Geelong, and they've given up 60 over their last 5, so very similar there. I still lean to Geelong in this instance with backs. I say it every week, but I just love Tom Stewart. I think 13K is a pretty good price for him. He's just super consistent. He does have the 100-point upside. Brisbane, Geelong do have an array of backs around sort of the cheaper mark that you can sort of save a bit of cash with. Anyone down there from, even if you want to play Blixarves in the back line, you can, but Atkins, if it rains around, you've got to start to worry a bit about Henry and Henderson, but it does make it a little bit more likely for the likes of Jed Buse, who... That's Henderson. You tipped Henderson last week for the 21, I think, so that explains that performance. But Buse, like he's a really average fantasy player, very good defender, Buse. But you look at his scores there; they're not too bad at that $7,000 price tag. So I'd be looking to, like, my favourite option would be Stewart paired with a guy like Buse, or even an Atkins. Roll the dice on a guy like that. And then you see Zach Tui there, who you can use up forward. So if you're struggling to find forward options, or you think Geelong might try and control the ball in the back half, you do have the option of even running the 4 of them, Blixarve, Stewart, Buse and Tui. So there's an angle I'd be looking to take in a few lineups.
Now, on the flip side, do you add anything for the Dogs? Bailey Dale's been great touch, apart from that 76 last week, but across the board, I don't think the Dogs scored pretty well through the backs last week. Here, look at Caleb Daniel. He only scored 79. So I think they might be just too priced up for this matchup.
Yeah, they're hard. They're hard to play. It's a single game slate, so anything can happen. Bailey Dale, I still think he's nudged under 12,000. I think he was starting to get overpriced there. He's still pretty high up for me. I'd prefer to look at a guy who's look at the Croziers and the Jurayas of the world just at a cheaper price tag, and Bailey Williams there, who's gone under 10,000 now. These are guys who are not in the greatest of form, but all of them have shown sort of a similar ceiling across the journey that maybe you try and buy low and sell high. So maybe avoid the likes of Dale and then go with a Williams or a Crozier or a Juray and try and catch him on one of those return to forms. The cheaper guy there is Rourke Smith. He's a forward defender. It hasn't been too bad. Did you see his injury? Just off topic. No. He went skidding across the synthetic grass at wherever they played last time. I can't remember exactly where it was, but he burned basically both his legs by skidding on the synthetic grass.
Right.
The bandages and all sorts of stuff. But he's right to go, apparently. You see there, like, if he gets about 60 there at 7K, that's a reasonable effort. Obviously, this is a really bad matchup, Geelong, but he's probably my pick of those cheaper guys if you want to get away from Buse.
Yeah, that would be a good pivot off Buse. You know, save you a couple $100 and you get some leverage on the field as well. So keep that in mind. Now, before we talk about the premium midfielders here on the slate here, I want to scroll down right down the bottom and have a look at this. There is no value whatsoever on this particular slate. So
nil.
You got a nil.
A duck.
Look, Mark O'Connor is the one you got at 8,680. And look, if he's trying to do tag, he's not really doing a good job of it, but he's there. And he's going to appear in a lot of lineups if you're going to be spending up on Stewart and stuff like that. So would you be playing Mark O'Connor, yes or no?
Well, you sort of have to in a lot of cases because he's the only cheap mid. And Well, you got to pay 11K plus. There's 50. You're basically spending 50K in your midfield if you don't go with O'Connor. Like you say, I assume he's going to get a tagging role again. You'd have to think he'd go to the Bont because he's arguably the most damaging player in the competition at the moment. The only other thing I could possibly think is if you went to McRae, just because McRae's probably more gettable than the Bont. Doesn't have the hurt factor. I think he probably will go to the Bont, but I'm not 100% sure there. 8,000, he can, like you see there, he's got the 41. Like, it's obviously you can throw in a score that's going to crash your lineup. So if you want to fade him, you can definitely avoid him if you can build your lineups other way. Because I assume he's going to be a bit over-owned just because people are going to find it hard to build teams, and they're just going to have O'Connor thrown in there to save a bit of salary. So I can definitely see the case for fading O'Connor here, but it is hard to build a team without him in your lineup, if that makes any sense at all.
It does make sense. I mean, you're not going to feel great about it, but everyone else.
He's not a bad play either. Like, no. At that price and that midfield exposure, he's definitely not a bad play, but he's a guy you can look to get away from at what's basically guaranteed to be high ownership.
Now, I've got a question here from the chat. Is Shinny or Cinny JC? If there was a game to draft the Medi sub in your squad, is this it? All right. Let's have a look at this option. All right. So if we go to click the all option here, scroll down. You can't do Higgins. You can't do Stanley. So who you reckon the Medi subs will be tomorrow? It could be Guthrie at 6'4" for the Cats, or probably might be Narkle again, who was the Medi sub last week at 8'7". And if you look at the Doggies, it was Riley West, and he's not even here.
He's not even listed.
It probably might be
Wallace. Like Narkle and Toby McLean, they're obviously not going to pay 10K for a Medi sub. Narkle was the sub last week. Just whack his... He was the sub, wasn't he, Narkle?
Yeah, he was the sub. But I don't think he's even playing.
No, he didn't get on the ground last week, I don't think. But you'd like to maybe if Guthrie was the sub, because the advantage of Guthrie is that he's only 6,000 and it does give you a bit more salary to work with. If Narkle was the sub and he got on early, there is obviously a good chance that he could smash that $8,000 price tag. He's a pretty handy fantasy scorer. So, yeah, you obviously wouldn't want to go overboard, but I could definitely see a case for doing that, especially with the lack of the money in the midfield. Like, Narkle's a pretty reasonable... They got a lot of old guys there, Geelong. Like, you could fade danger and cheer for him to do a calf again, and on comes Narkle and you're laughing.
I reckon if it was a yes or no, I'll probably say no, just because of the prices are just not that far much. If it was a 5K to 6K guy, then you could probably consider it. And especially there, but maybe even the rucks, if it was like a ruck Medi sub, I don't know, sure they'll do it. But look, probably not this matchup, but if you ever come across this particular slate where there's just absolutely no value, it's not part of the rules. You can do it. So
it's definitely good thinking. Like, that's the type of thinking you sometimes need to land on to get one over the field.
All right. So find me some premium mids then. Who's got a really good matchup here? Because you've got to nail this. You have to really nail the mids here. This one.
You do. And we know that both teams are very hard to score against. Well, one thing about Geelong is we talked about this last week when we sort of tipped into what was he called? Nighttime Wines.
Yes.
And he came out and delivered with a big 116. That we picked O'Connor to Boak, and we had Wines as being the big inside mid that you can get at against Geelong. And we went through some other names. There was Hugh Greenwood has gone a big ton, and Jack Steele and Brad Crouch both went over 110 against Geelong. The guy who probably fits that is Bontempelli, but that's coupled with the fact that O'Connor will probably go to him. Whether O'Connor can stop him in in the centre clinches. I'm not 100% sure, but it probably just takes away a bit of the cheaper ball he might get around the ground, Bontempelli. I still think he's pretty reasonably priced there at 15,000. And so just because O'Connor's going to him, I'm not as scared of playing him as what like Boak I didn't want to play, but Boak still got 98 against O'Connor last week. So it's not the end of the world. It's not like we're dealing with DeBoer here. It's O'Connor. But so that obviously Jack McRae is the other one that if you do think O'Connor's going to Bontempelli and McRae's running loose, like have a look at those scores. Yeah, 17,000 is a bit on the high side. It's going to take a bit of fitting into your lineups, but he's probably the safer option. The other dog that I would look at is, especially if there's a bit of rain, is Liberatore, because he fits that sort of inside ball-winning, tackling mould as well, and he's a bit of a cheaper price. He doesn't often have those big 100 games, but it's probably not a bad setup for him. So they're the three guys that I'm more looking at from the Dogs, away from Bailey Smith, who just seems to be out of form. You go to Geelong, and Geelong's sort of a hard one. I don't want to be with Parfitt. I'm a bit nervous of being with the likes of Menengola and Isaac Smith, but just because it's very hard to score against the Bulldogs as well. But so you end up coming back to Guthrie, Selwood, and Dangerfield. Now, did you watch much of Dangerfield last week, Smatho?
A little bit. I did watch a bit of Dangerfield.
Yeah.
He was. That's a lazy 51 there. no goals, no mark,
Yeah.
no marks. That's what really hurt him there.
No marks. Port's obviously a hard matchup as well, but does he need another run, Dangerfield? I made the call that I thought he'd be ready to go. Watching the game, I think I probably got that wrong a bit. It's a 14,000. He does come back home with the run under his belt. It's probably not a bad spot to back the truck up because he was pretty high, well, reasonably owned, and he would have disappointed a lot of people. But he's obviously going to get some attention there. It's not telling you much saying McRae and Guthpig, is it? But well, obviously Duncan's the other one there, but he's so expensive, Duncan. And
yeah,
he's pretty average last week, and he's not in the centre bounces, so he's hard to pay up that sort of money for a guy not in the centre bounces. The one argument for Duncan is if the Bulldogs get back to that sort of giving up uncontested ball in the back half, Duncan's a guy who'll be chipping around, but so too is Guthrie. I'd lean to Guthrie again. All season I've leaned to Guthrie at the cheaper price over Duncan. I'm going to go with it again. Okay.
Well, let's fill this out. So I'm going to go Guthrie. I'll probably have to go all right down the bottom here to get Mark O'Connor here. Leaves me 10,800.
Throw in Libba. Throw in.
Can I get the Bont in for now?
It's an interesting discussion. If you're going to play O'Connor, are you playing O'Connor because you want him to be tagging and around the ball, and then maybe you might avoid playing Bontempelli? Or if you're going to fade O'Connor, then maybe you say, well, I'm going to fade O'Connor and hope either they don't tag with him or he ends up playing in the back line or something, and then you go with a couple of your dog midfielders. That's something to take a little bit more think about. It's something for you to think about if you're watching on how you sort of attack that. I'd throw Bontempelli in. I just love him.
Yep. I'll put him in there for now. I haven't got much left. Let's discuss these options then. So obviously you've got the dual position players of Dangerfield, Hunter, Smith. We kind of rubbished the guys last week, such as Hawkins and Rowan and Cameron, and look what they did last week. Look at this.
Bang,
Hawkins,
bang.
100. Where's Rowan? Gary, 100. Jeremy Cameron, 100. They were the three leading scorers from last week. So
against the hardest team in the competition to score points for forwards.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Work that out.
Yeah.
Don't get married to the data. That's what that says.
All right. So obviously I've got to come down here towards the lower end of town. So let's start here at Brad Close. He's here at 8,020. He's that forward pocket, high half forward kind of role that not really a fantasy friendly game, but it can pop if he gets 3 or 4 goals. A lot of people have been jumping on Cody Waitman, who seems to be hitting good value there and still remaining at 7,530. He'll probably be pretty popular. And then we've already talked about Rourke Smith. But JJ, we've got him on another premium slate here. Killed us a few weeks ago when he had an 85 when I said, no, don't play him. But now he's back to his old way. So where are we at with Jason Johannesson?
Very hard to pick. One thing I'll say is we saw Rosie with a bit of pace in that forward line for Port Adelaide. Well, we kicked 4 goals in the first quarter, so it's a bit out of the blue. But he did continue on and get sort of 90, 98 points for the match. And that is, you could sort of argue a forward with a bit of pace against Geelong it can be hard. I sort of look back through it. A guy like Jake Arts got 69. DeGoey, obviously bullocking forward, but a guy with a bit of pace had a big ton against them. It's few and far between for guys in the forward line against Geelong this year, but there's a little bit of an opportunity, I guess you'd say, for a guy with a bit of pace. So maybe Johannesson fits that bill. I spoke about Rourke Smith as a cheaper option. Waitman's a bit of that sort of X factor as well that could show up. I think if you're going to go a cheap guy, you want a guy who can go big. You don't want to just take an easy 50 or so at 6,000-7,000. I think you want to give yourself the option for a slate breaker. I think we might be picking Steph Martin to give us a bit of money up forward here. Smatho, I did mention Zach Tui is a guy that I like to be able to play in the forward line.
Yeah,
and we have talked a lot about just rolling the dice on these big forwards, Hawkins, Cameron, sprinkling some through your lineup. So when one of them lands, Norton fits that bill as well, who can take a mark and he can show up at like he can score 111k. So there's possibilities there, but Geelong are always a very hard team to score against for forwards, and the data will tell you that Western Bulldogs all of a sudden are the hardest team in the comp for the forwards to fare against. So there's an argument that you go for guys like Tui, you go for Hunter, maybe you go for guys that aren't stay-at-home forwards. But then fitting them all in is very, very difficult.
It's very difficult. You'll have to make sacrifices in your midfield to get a flyer in which, look, it's a GPP winning play, but...
What can you get for 7.4 there, Smatho?
I can't get Waitman anymore. I'm a couple of $100 short, but Rourke Smith there.
Or JJ. Like JJ, we know what we get with him, and often that's not much, but yeah. Actually, down the category for JJ, I think we've seen this happen many a time. There you go.
There you go. So, yeah.
It's going to be an absolute ripper of a match, footy-wise. You're going to earn your win, fantasy-wise.
I tell you what, whoever wins the golden ticket or the 75,000K will get a little clap, I reckon. Hopefully, we have to remind me next week, show me the winner for the particular side. So, mate, this has been a bit of a struggle, but we've got through it. It's going to be an absolutely ripping match on Friday nights. Yeah, exciting game. $75,000 contest. All there ready to go. All right, have any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
Final thoughts? No, just make sure you're a bit... There you go. We're a bit different with JJ, surely. Make sure you're a bit different. That's how you're going to win.
Excellent. Well, Hef, thanks for joining me on the latest edition of the DFS Down Under show. This is AFL Round 14. We'll be back, I believe, Wednesday night for 2 games again for the Thursday and Friday night footy. Thank you so much, Hef. Thanks for joining me.
Enjoy the holiday, mate.
It's not a holiday. It's a working holiday. Take it easy. Thanks very much, mate. And we'll see you all again next week for the Down Under show. Cheers.
Thank you.